Hello folks, in this video we are going to cover operators or directives in components. Basically, there are few out of the box directives that really help us in making HTML look more better and easier. So let's go into them. I have created another component called as operators, and inside the app component.html I have written app operators so that it loads our operator component when we open the browser. Now in this HTML I have written few lines. Let's go through them. Basically I have created a section with two different divs. One is the if and one is the ng template for else. I'll come back to this later. And we have another div in which we have a for operator section in which there is a unordered list with no elements yet. Okay. In the component.ts there are two variables. One is a boolean variable my condition which is currently set to false, and there is a list elements variable which is an array of string which has 10 strings inside it. Okay, now let's consider a scenario. What if you want to display all the 10 elements inside this list onto your template? How would you do that? Would you do it individually? No, right? Because the size of the array may change, or there may be other elements that may be added to this array, and in that case our logic would fail. So we need something dynamic. So let's go to the operators template. Here we want to display each item as a list. From this array of elements we want to display each element in its separate li tag. How do we do that? Well, let's try to add something called as ng-for. So there is an operator or an operator directive in Angular called as ng-for. Let's write ng-for equals. Now inside this quotes it supports JavaScript. So basically we can write something like let item of list elements, and this is basically going to iterate over the list elements and take each of that item and assign it to this one. So now all we need to do is remember that we use string interpolation to show something in our template, and let's save it. Let's go to our browser, and you can see all 11 elements are printed one below the another. And if you see the HTML, you can see that there were 10 li tags created, or 11 for that matter, and each of them is an individual li tag. So how do these get created? Well, these got created dynamically. When the ng-for condition was iterated and evaluated, each of that item got a separate li tag because we wrote a for directive, which essentially means that it will iterate over whatever iteratable is given, and it will create those many items of that type. Alright, let's go to if else. Now, what if you want to conditionally render certain block of code and hide certain block of code in HTML? Well, we can do that. Let's do that. Okay, in this div, suppose we want to load this statement based on the boolean value of my condition. Currently it is set to false, so let's make it as true. Now how do we load this statement only and do not load this statement at all? Well, what we do something is star ng if, my bad, equals, and now you can write a boolean condition here. You can write any expression that evaluates to a boolean. For example, 8 equal to or triple equal to 4 will evaluate to false. So now let's just write my condition since it's already a boolean. So basically what will happen is that this ng-if will evaluate this condition, and if it finds it to be truthy, then the content inside this div is loaded. Otherwise it is not loaded. Okay. Now what if we want to implement something like if else? For example, if we want to load this Otherwise, we want to load this. So in that case, the else part must be a ng template, because if you write a div again, then that is created inside the DOM. But the ng template is a virtual element, which means that it is not created, or it is not an actual HTML element. So it is not created until it is called. So we want that behavior here. So let's create a template variable now. What is a template variable? Well, this is a reference to an element inside the DOM. Basically, we are creating a local reference to this ng template inside this DOM. Inside this DOM, which can be accessed anywhere inside this HTML. And this is called a template reference. So why we are creating that is, after evaluating my condition, let's ask our ngIf to load the else part if our condition turns out to be false. All right, clear enough? Let's go to the browser and see. Load this statement if condition is true. Only that statement was loaded. Well, let's create a button here. Let's get it to be is primary. And now click me. Let's define a function here. So we have implemented a simple toggle which will take my condition variable and assign it to not of that variable, which means if it is true, it will assign it to false, and if it is false, it will assign it to true. Okay, let's bind it here using event binding. On click event, we want to fire the change condition method that we just implemented. Okay, now let's click here. You can see that it toggled it to the another div, and the above div for which it was true is now hidden. Let's toggle it again, and you can see that on each toggle we are rendering a different div inside the HTML. To give you a more clear idea, we can also see that the div in question indeed has been loaded. Okay, if you see, it is changing dynamically. So these are a few operators that come in handy when loading something on HTML dynamically and considering certain statements and their values, and based on that rendering the HTML accordingly. We will be seeing more of it in our project, so let's move on to that for now. Thank you.